and then the derailleur's going bang.
That's right folks, Shimano XTR Di2 has finally arrived. It's been 7 long years since the last generation of XTR was launched, and in that time SRAM has been turning up the heat with its electronic axis and transmission group sets. And to say that Shimano has some catching up to do would be the understatement of the decade. With the new XTR M9200 group set, Shimano introduces a wireless electronic drivetrain that features the most ergonomic shifter we've ever used and one of the toughest derailleurs we've ever tested. Yes, it still uses a hanger, but Shimano insists there are very good reasons why. There are also 2 new carbon wheel sets and 2 new disc brakes, with the 4-piston disc brake being a notable highlight that we'll be talking about later on in this video. Now, we've had the chance to spend a load of time on the new XTR components, and Mick has actually had a group set on his bike for the past 7 months. Here we'll be diving into the key details to let you know what's new, how it performs on the trail, and whether this has all been worth the wait. The Shimano XTR M9200 group set revolves around a new 1x12 drivetrain. If you're expecting some radical changes, say a move to a 13-speed cassette, then you're going to be sorely disappointed. On the flip side, there are no new standards here, and that means that the new XTR components are backwards compatible. If you already have a Shimano 1x12 drivetrain on your mountain bike, you could just buy the shifter and derailleur if you wanted to upgrade to wireless. The upgrade kit will cost you around 1,600 Aussie dollars compared to 3,300 bucks for the complete drivetrain. It isn't exactly what you call cheap, but it is far more accessible than a SRAM XX transmission, which requires you to go all in and buy the whole lot. There are also some interesting options with XTR. There's a new hollow forged crankset that comes in a lighter and narrower race version and a heavier and wider enduro version. Along with the standard 10 to 51 tooth cassette, Shimano will also be offering a smaller 9 to 45 tooth cassette, which is designed to be paired with a short cage derailleur. This compact setup is marketed more towards XC and enduro racers, but having tested it, we think there are benefits for other riders too. More on that in a bit. Of course, the star of the XTR show is the new Di2 derailleur. It is quite the chunky number, though it does hide its bulk pretty well when mounted to the bike, tucking the motor in behind the hanger where it's better protected. The main linkage then houses the lithium-ion battery, which can be removed for charging separately. To reduce the chance of snagging rocks and roots, the derailleur features a wedge-shaped profile with a much narrower leading edge. This was made possible by removing the clutch and replacing it with a new spring-loaded damper. The dual spring system is said to offer similar levels of chain tension, albeit in a much more compact package that requires basically no maintenance. Now, while the derailleur is designed to glance off obstacles in the first place, in the event of a direct strike, it is able to move inboard before the motor returns it to its previous gear selection. Furthermore, it's also free to rotate backwards on the B-axle, helping it to get out of the way. And this is one of the key reasons why Shimano stuck with the derailleur hanger rather than going to a direct mount system like SRAM. Another point of difference that Shimano is keen to point out is its solid jockey wheels. There are no cutouts, reducing the chance of sticks and debris from getting jammed in there. Controlling the Di2 derailleur is an entirely new wireless shifter. There are 2 separate paddles, both of which feature a nicely textured rubber surface. You can adjust the vertical and horizontal position of each paddle, and it's possible to change between a single or a double mechanical click. There's also a multi-shift function whereby holding down the paddle will shift 2 or 3 gears at a time. You can customize this in the eTube app, and it even allows you to adjust the speed of that multi-shift. Pairing the wireless components and installing the XTR drivetrain is all pretty straightforward. We put a heap of info about the setup process in the full review, which is now live over at flowmountainbike.com. You'll find confirmed weights, prices and spec details on all of the individual components, as well as a detailed comparison between XTR Di2 and SRAM transmission. If you're keen to check it out, just click the link in the video description below. Now, out on the trail, the first difference you'll notice with the new Shimano XTR Di2 drivetrain, aside from the clean wireless cockpit, is the brilliant shifter. Thanks to the rubber paddles, the tactile click, and the broad range of adjustability, the ergonomics are unmatched. The action is noticeably lighter than Shimano's mechanical XTR shifter, and being able to adjust each paddle means you can get them into the ideal position. The overall shift quality is similar to Shimano's mechanical drivetrains due to the Hyperglide Plus chain and cassette. Going up the cassette into an easier gear is faultless, it's very quiet and smooth. Going the other direction isn't quite as smooth and it can sometimes be a bit louder and rougher. Now this is a normal function of the Hyperglide Plus design, which doesn't require the chain to hit a specific shift gate every time. While it can be louder, Shimano believes that a faster and more audible shift is better than a slower and quieter one. Chain retention has otherwise been impeccable with no drop chains throughout testing. The new dual spring damper works well and it's noticeably smoother than the previous clutch design. It offers better sensitivity, reducing chain oscillation and noise. Mick's also had no degradation in performance with the derailleur that he's been testing over the past 7 months, which is a very good sign. He's also had plenty of time to smack the derailleur about, though truth be told, it is kind of difficult to hit in the first place. Given it doesn't stick out particularly far, you're more likely to smack your heel, the pedal, or the rear tyre before clipping the derailleur. Of course, that didn't stop Mick from trying. Having found the perfect rock in Newcastle, he set about deliberately smashing the derailleur to see how it would handle such an impact. Watching the footage back, you can clearly see the derailleur moving inboard as well as rotating backwards on the hanger. This is exactly what allows it to get out of the way and reduce the chance of snagging. Once past the rock, the derailleur then moves back to its original position, and the result was an impact that Mick could hear but couldn't so much feel. There was minimal disruption to the bike's momentum, and he was able to quickly get back on the pedals as if nothing had happened. Following half a dozen of these rocky uppercuts to the derailleur's face, there are now plenty of scars, but amazingly no structural damage. Even the hanger has remained straight, which is pretty incredible. It seems the outer skid plate and the battery cover copped most of the abuse, and handily both of those items are replaceable. The derailleur cage is also replaceable, but we're yet to have any issues there. Now if something did get stuck in there or the cage took a whack, Shimano's theory is that the hanger will take the hit for the team and bend or break first before the derailleur or frame does. Having been thoroughly impressed with the standard drivetrain, Mick also had the opportunity to test out the compact setup with the 9-45 tooth cassette and the short cage derailleur. Installation requires a special tool for that tiny 9-tooth lock ring, and you'll also want to fit a smaller chainring if you're keen to maintain a similar top-end and low-end gear. One of the key advantages of the compact setup is more ground clearance, with the lower jockey wheel sitting 23mm higher off the ground. It's also lighter by around 70 grams, but more importantly, the shorter cage and the tighter chain will lead to less slapping about on the trail. The result is a noticeably smoother and quieter drivetrain with better retention overall. While that all sounds positive, the compact setup won't be for everyone. Firstly, it's worth noting that a lot of mountain bikes have a minimum chainring size. On Mick's stump jumper, for example, a 30 tooth is as small as you want to go, and even then, the chain ends up very close to the chainstay when you're in the 9-tooth sprocket. Downsizing the chainring will also have an effect on your bike's suspension performance. In most cases, it'll increase anti-squat and provide snappier pedaling performance, at the expense of more chain growth and drivetrain feedback. That may actually be desirable for XC racers, but less so for the enduro crowd. Of course, you could always keep your existing chainring size, which would effectively see you giving up that 51-tooth climbing gear. If you have the legs for it though, the compact setup is well worth considering for the smoother performance, the reduced noise, and the improved ground clearance. While we've had great experience with the Shimano XTR Di2 drivetrain so far, it hasn't entirely been without fault. During initial setup, I discovered that the battery charger wasn't working. Being a proprietary item, I had to wait for a replacement to be sent out before I could charge the battery and use the derailleur. Hopefully it was just a one-off, but it is still worth mentioning. Speaking of batteries, there's the usual downside of having to make sure that they're all properly charged. Shimano claims that the main battery in the derailleur will last for over 300 kilometers of riding, which will be around 2 to 3 weeks for most riders. To check the battery status, you have to press the function button on the derailleur to light up the LED. Ideally, we'd like to see this LED flash automatically when the battery starts getting low to help draw your attention to it. You can also use the eTube app to check the battery status, though as we mentioned before, it is kind of clunky. You need to manually pair the Di2 system to the app each time you open it, and then you need to manually unpair it before you can ride again, which is kind of annoying. Outside of those quibbles, really it's the high price of the XTR Di2 drivetrain that's going to turn off most mountain bikers. The upside is that you don't need to buy the entire drivetrain, and the backwards compatibility flexibility means you can mix and match existing 12-speed components as you like. Also, if Shimano's road group sets are anything to go by, you can expect the wireless technology to trickle down to an XT level at some point in the future. That would help to drop the pricing and make the wireless shifting more accessible. Alongside the new Di2 Drivetrain, Shimano is also launching 2 new XTR brakes. The 2-piston race brake is largely unchanged, while the 4-piston enduro brake that we've been testing has received a complete redesign. The calipers are now one piece for added stiffness, and there are new anti-rattle fin pads that feature a tighter fit to reduce movement and noise. Also new is the low viscosity mineral oil. Helpfully differentiated by its gold color, it's a thinner fluid that's said to be more stable across a wider range of temperatures. To go with the new oil, Shimano has also updated the rubber piston seals to provide more consistent rebound speed. The brake levers also feature a completely new design, with the lever pivot brought in as close to the handlebar as possible. The idea here is to provide a lever path that follows the natural movement of your forefinger. The lever blade itself has a curious 5-degree upsweep, and it articulates on a sealed cartridge bearing rather than the bushing of old. You'll still find the free stroke adjuster, and there's a neat dial for adjusting the lever's reach. Setting up the new XTR brakes will be a familiar process for anyone who's used Shimano brakes in the past, with the obvious exception being the new low viscosity mineral oil. If you're after some tips and tricks on the bleeding process, make sure you check out our XTR review over at flowmountainbike.com. You'll find prices, confirmed weights, and a load more info in that review, so head on over to the Flow website if you're keen to check it out. But to sum up our experience on the trail, these are some of the best performing brakes we have ever tested. For a start, the lever ergonomics are superb. Having the main pivot right up against the bar means the lever blade moves more in line with your finger. It seems kind of simple, but it really does work well. The overall action is light and smooth, in part due to that cartridge bearing pivot. And power delivery is predictable and progressive thanks to the servo wave linkage. The initial bite point isn't overly aggressive, and that means you can feather the brakes without accidentally locking up a wheel. However, there is still masses of power to be unearthed deeper into the stroke. While we haven't found the XTR brakes to be as brutal as SRAM mavens, we can't say that either of us have been left wanting for more power. You may have recently spotted these brakes on some World Cup downhill race bikes, and that should give you an indication as to the kind of riding that they're capable of. We'll also note that we've had 0 changes to the lever's bite point, which has been an issue with Shimano brakes in the past. The new low viscosity mineral oil and the updated rubber seals are claimed to help with overall consistency, and we have no reason to doubt that based on our collective experience so far. While we've had no problems on the trail, I did try to simulate the conditions that could lead to wandering bite point. Riding down a road descent at around 70 kilometers an hour, I dragged the front brake all the way down and continually stabbed at the lever to see if I could get any pump up. Despite my best efforts, there was no perceivable change in the lever feel, which felt exactly the same at the bottom as it did at the top. After jumping off the bike, I found that the front brake caliper was warm but not exactly hot. The brake pad's radiator fins, on the other hand, were absolutely scorching, so they were clearly doing their job. Speaking of the new fin brake pads, the rattle that plagued previous versions is thankfully gone. There are no other weird noises from the braking surfaces either, leading to fewer distractions while riding. And that kind of sums up our experience with the XTR brakes pretty well. They're quiet, smooth, consistent, powerful, and easy to control, and they're no doubt one of the big highlights of the new XTR group set. Now, before I wrap up this video, I do want to touch on the new XTR wheels. These are offered in a lightweight race version and a burlier enduro version. Both utilize low-profile carbon rims and the new XTR hubs, which for the first time ever incorporate sealed cartridge bearings instead of the cup and cone design of old. The rear hub also gets an updated ratchet system that delivers faster engagement with just 3.5 degrees between each click. Unfortunately, the race wheel set won't be available in Australia, but the burlier enduro wheel set will be, and we've spent quite a lot of time riding them. If you're keen to know more, you'll find a separate review on the XTR wheels over on the Flow website. As mentioned earlier, we also have reviews on the Di2 Drivetrain and the new XTR brakes. If you've got any questions about the new XTR components, there's a good chance you'll find the answers in those reviews. If not, feel free to ask away in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them for you. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the new XTR group set. Is there anything here that you're particularly excited about? Or is there anything that you think that Shimano has missed? Tell us what you reckon and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Tooroo!